Story 1, it's either marriage or divorce. I gave my boyfriend an ultimatum that he must marry me, but I'm starting to regret it. My boyfriend and I are about 30 years old. We moved in together 6 months ago after finishing our master's degrees and moving to a new city for work. We've been together for years now, and we haven't had any problems living together. We're happy, we want the same things in life, and we get along great. The problem is that I've known for a long time that he's the one. I want to spend the rest of my life with him. I want to settle down and start a family soon. I was already in a serious relationship with him, which also lasted for years, so I have a good understanding of what I need from a relationship. But my boyfriend is not in the same place mentally as I am. Here's why. First, he was late in maturing in relationships, and I'm his first real girlfriend. Second, he has a hard time making decisions about everything, from work to what sneakers to buy. When we discuss the future, I tell him straight out that I'm ready to settle down with him right now. He says he loves me and that everything is great between us, but he needs more time to see where things are going. He even jokes that he hasn't had enough women yet. Last year, we had serious conversations about where to live after graduation. I told him I wasn't going to move to the same city with him unless we were engaged. He didn't propose, and I stood my ground, and despite the slim chances, it so happened that we both found jobs in the same city, halfway across the country from where we lived before, and we moved there together and rented an apartment. Now I'm starting to get tired and suffer from this situation. It has become a major source of stress for me and the main stumbling block in our relationship. So, in September 2017, I told him that when our lease ends in April 2018, I would move out unless we get engaged. He's never made a decision without a deadline, and I thought it would push him in the right direction, but now I'm afraid he'll never propose, especially since he says he doesn't plan to. And now I regret the ultimatum. I think maybe I was a fool to ruin everything good by trying to rush things. But damn, it's been 4 years already. I'm also afraid that if he does propose, it will be forced, and he'll always regret it. On the other hand, I gave him roughly the same ultimatum last year during our job search, and he made it clear he'd rather be in another city, which would most likely mean breaking up for us, than getting engaged. I want to think I'm being rational, but am I just stupid and desperate? If he doesn't propose by April, should I stand my ground and move out, essentially sacrificing a wonderful relationship because it's not moving at my pace? I'm available to answer any questions. This is getting incredibly stressful, and I appreciate anyone taking the time to read this and offer advice. So, before we move on to the update, I suggest giving the author of this story some advice right now. How would you handle this situation? Would you pressure the guy, give him an ultimatum or not? And in this situation with this girl, what should she do? Should she stand her ground or back out somehow? Personally, I think ultimatums are perfectly normal. Putting pressure on someone is generally normal. Well, that's life, unfortunately. I'm sure there will be a ton of people in the comments who will say, no, that's completely unacceptable. But put yourself in the shoes of a girl who's been dating a guy for a long time and needs some certainty. On the one hand, you kind of want to get married, but the guy doesn't want to, and you don't want to waste time either. So what do? You need to be honest and give him an ultimatum. What should you do? So yes, on the one hand, it's unpleasant, but at least it's honest. The main thing, probably, is not to give ultimatums that ultimately discredit you, because you won't be able to fulfill your promise under the ultimatum. So we see that the girl is already starting to doubt whether she did the right thing by giving that ultimatum. Well, let's find out what happened next. Update 1. The guy admitted that I gave him an ultimatum, and I tried to use this as an opportunity for a serious conversation about how he sees our future. We sat down to discuss it a few times, but the conversations got nowhere, and he told me not to bring it up again. I stopped. We lived happily for a while, but I kept remembering the ultimatum. Part of me hoped he was secretly preparing a proposal and would surprise me. No, now there are 10 days left until the March 31st deadline. I'm 100% committed to it, and he just said he wants me to visit his parents in September. Then after that trip, he'll talk to them about our relationship and think about proposing sometime in December. Part of me is furious and offended by this idea. First of all, I've already met his parents and spent a fair amount of time with them. I like them, and they like me too. They live in a more isolated state, which is difficult to get to. Plane tickets are expensive, and it would take 2 days by car. I've suggested going there several times, and we've had plenty of opportunities to do so, but my boyfriend has always been against it for various reasons. The most offensive thing is that we agreed on a vacation last week. We'd known about it for months and could have planned everything. He said he was going to visit his parents and was thinking of inviting me along, but he was very vague. I looked at the tickets. They were reasonably priced at the time. I tried to arrange everything, but when I showed him the options, he said, "Not now, he's too busy," and kept putting off planning. Then, less than 3 weeks before the trip, he said I had to go with him to his family or there would be no proposal. By then, all the tickets I was looking at had skyrocketed in price, and it would have been a huge financial burden for me. Honestly, what he did was shitty. He told me what I had to do at the last minute instead of planning everything in advance like I suggested. I thought it over and decided not to go. Now he says he can't propose because I haven't been to his family's home, but I've already met them several times. Our families know each other too. He claims that without it, his family won't approve of our marriage. If he had told me this before the ticket prices skyrocketed, there wouldn't have been a problem. We've had several vacations since I gave him the ultimatum, and we could have gone to his parents' home then. I feel like he just set me up so he could blame me later for not proposing. I don't know if it matters, but he's Asian American and I'm white. He was born in the US. I asked if the requirement to go to his parents' home had anything to do with his culture. He replied, "Maybe I don't want to ignore their culture at all. So if anyone knows anything about it, please share, now that the deadline is 10 days away and he understands that I'm serious." He keeps begging me not to go through with it, but he's not going to propose. He says it's illogical because he would have proposed in December, but he's willing to risk me in order to avoid proposing in April. I understand his logic. If we both want to get married, then what difference does it make? But I can't do this anymore. Besides, he's a grown man, and it insults me that he blames it on the fact that his parents didn't welcome me into their home. They constantly ask him what his plans are for me. They don't know about the ultimatum, and I get the impression that they are just as curious as I am. What are the prospects for our relationship? I don't think they directly told him, "Let her come to us first, and then propose." These are just my thoughts. Any advice or comments would be greatly appreciated. Update 2, March 2018. I still haven't followed through with the ultimatum. I was planning to move out, even found a new apartment and wrote a check for the deposit. But at the last minute, I couldn't imagine my life without my boyfriend. I decided I loved him too much to leave because of the deadline I'd already set. I also believed he really meant what he said about getting engaged in December. It seemed stupid to dump him after 4.5 years together, just because I didn't want to wait a few more months. As a compromise, he agreed that we would get a cat. I'd wanted one for a long time, but he was against it and that he would go to a family event with me at least once this year. On March 31st, the day I was planning to move out, we got the cat together. September 2018. My boyfriend and I enjoyed our life together, barely thinking about the ultimatum. We both needed to recuperate. I went to a therapist and took care of myself. I found a new hobby running, made new friends, and devoted a lot of time to my career and my amazing cat. I think focusing on myself, my work, and my friends took some of the pressure off him. Several family events happened during this time, but he always had excuses why he couldn't go. Although, maybe that's not so important. By the end of the summer, everything was fine again, as if the ultimatum had never happened. However, he constantly complained about our cat. September 2018, a trip to his family. As promised, I went to his parents' home in September. As I already mentioned, he is Chinese American and I am white, so I brushed up on my Chinese a little and was able to understand and speak at least a little when we were all together. The trip was great. I genuinely enjoyed my time with his parents, and I liked his hometown. I left a few days before him so he could have some time alone with them and talk about our future plans. I asked him several times how the conversation went, and he said his parents were excited about our future, but that getting engaged in December was too early. This sounded absolutely crazy to me. And again, it seemed like he was simply projecting his views onto his parents. He also said that I needed to learn Chinese before the wedding. His parents speak excellent English, but within the family, they prefer Chinese. So I started learning the language. December 2018, somewhere around November, I started worrying that he would change his mind again. He started making the usual excuses again. For For example, one time he casually mentioned that he couldn't propose in December because he needed to save money. We share finances, and neither of us has money problems. Another time, he panicked about my student loans. In my profession, this is the norm. I have a stable job, a good salary, and automatic payments. He demanded that I show him a spreadsheet of my finances before he could think about a future together. Luckily, I already had one. I showed it, and he calmed down. Meanwhile, my friends and family started asking questions about the upcoming wedding. Although their intentions were good, it only made me nervous because I was increasingly afraid that after all this, the wedding would never happen. I worked with a therapist to release this stress, steered family conversations away from the wedding. I also made rules for myself: no whining, no hints, no mention of a wedding or engagement, and so on. I didn't do much of that anyway, given what the ultimatum had taught me. We spent Christmas together for the first time this year, and I was sure he would propose, but he didn't. And I didn't say anything. I didn't feel offended. For New Year's, he went to visit his family, and I stayed in town to work. So, nothing happened either. January 2019. I accepted the fact that he never kept his word, despite the fact that I fulfilled my end of the bargain. I was the perfect girlfriend he asked me to be, and tried to use this as an opportunity for growth, both personally and in the relationship. But still, nothing changed. I continued to adhere to the rule of not bothering him, suppressing all thoughts of wanting to marry him. It got to the point where I began to associate my thoughts of marriage with him with feelings of shame and self-loathing, as if they were bad thoughts that I shouldn't have. I realized that I was ashamed of my own desires for the future, and that was terrible. But in the last few weeks, several things happened that made me realize that this was all complete nonsense. First, one of my bosses offered me excellent career prospects if I stayed with the company for the long term. However, my boyfriend wants to move out of the city where we live because we don't like it here, even though I'm generally fine with it. Plus, he's absolutely refused to ever move to my home state. The reason is that my family lives there and they irritate him. I thought, damn, this man puts so many restrictions on my life, yet he himself can't make a long-term commitment. And then this weekend, I went to my home state for my best friend's baby shower. I want kids too. That's the main reason why it's so important for me to get married soon. The biological clock is ticking. Yesterday, I was helping a friend and her husband set up a nursery, and I had a moment of epiphany. I realized that it's okay to want to get married and have kids. There's nothing shameful about it. And at this point, it's not just my desires or dreams that have been squashed by my boyfriend. No marriage. I can't stay in the city where I have job prospects. I can't move to my home state where my whole family is. But I've started to feel ashamed of any desires that conflict with his. So I'm starting to make a plan for moving forward, because this guy is taking more out of my life than he's adding. I'd appreciate any opinions or advice on what to do next, and I'm ready to hear everything. I was speaking from those who told me back in March that I should have left. I totally deserve it. Thanks for reading. Comments. Why isn't his reluctance to get married considered as normal as her desire to get married? Yes, you can break up with him, but if he doesn't want marriage, then her attempt to pressure him with an ultimatum is absurd. From the very beginning, he said he wanted to get married and have 2 or 3 children. Over the past 1 or 2 years, he's occasionally said he wants to do the same with me, but more and more often lately, he's been saying, I can't marry you when I do something stupid that he doesn't like. Like if I fart near him. Sometimes I call him out on it and he claims it's a joke. But yes, in reality, we want the same thing. According to him, it's just that he seems to have a mental block that prevents him from taking the steps to make it a reality. Plus, the constantly changing deadlines and the endless rings of trials he puts me through show that he's putting something off. I asked him why he's dragging it out, but all he says are excuses about family, money, student loans, and so on. I think either these are real reasons or he's hiding something else. I think the author has a lot more flaws than just not being a good listener. I'm sure she has a ton of her own problems that she's not telling us about, and I don't expect that. I'm just saying, without knowing both sides of the story, I'm not ready to call her boyfriend an asshole. Author. Of course I have flaws. Many of them have already been pointed out by commenters here. And of course, my boyfriend is not. No one is completely good or completely bad. I think the main thing I've realized now is that I've outgrown that relationship. People who are afraid of commitment are equally afraid of breakups and marriage. They're afraid to make any of those big decisions, so they freeze in place. There's no growth, only a feeling in their partner that they're not good enough, even though that's not really the case. Author, oh my God, this is exactly like my boyfriend. I'm going to talk to him about this tonight, and I know he'll be just as upset by the thought of breaking up as he is by the idea of getting married. Final update. I talked to my boyfriend about all of this last night. I started by asking him what's bothering him and how he sees our relationship. He said that his parents think everything is moving too fast and listed some of the problems he has with our relationship. 1. We don't make decisions together. For example, I want to stay in our city for career opportunities, even though he wants to move next year. Or that I sometimes plan ahead to meet up with friends on the weekends when he has free time, instead of us planning weekends together. 2. He's concerned that I receive a lot of packages from Amazon and he doesn't know what I buy. I showed him my order history. It's mostly home goods that we both use, plus the occasional thing for my hobby. But that's it, $20 a month. It's all paid for with my credit card, which I easily close every month, so I don't feel the need to coordinate every purchase with him. And 3rd, he also doesn't like that I'm chronically 5 minutes late for everything. It's true, and it's my fault. And again, this has been mentioned a lot in the comments. I want to point out that he directly said that none of this has to do with cultural differences or the fact that we are an interracial couple. However, after all this, he declared that he wasn't ready for marriage. I was furious and told him I wished I had heard this a year ago so I could move on. Basically, he was just trying to hold on to me for another year so he would have more time to decide if he was ready. I told him the relationship was over, and he seemed shocked. Now he's trying to act very nice, most likely to get me to change my mind. But I remain adamant, and that's the end of the story. I think the heroine did absolutely the right thing. Well, the only thing is, of course, it would have been necessary to correct it to leave immediately when the ultimatum was already given. My opinion, although, on the other hand, she will not be tormented by curiosity now. What would have happened if she had endured a little? And now let's move on to the next story. My ex-wife and I slept together. Story 2. Slept with my ex-wife. Hi everyone. My ex is 47 years old. I am 45. We have been divorced for 3 years. We have 2 sons, White and Jack. We broke up mainly because of the children and different approaches to parenting. My ex is a genius. She has a PhD. She is a scientific researcher and I am an analyst. She grew up in a family of cold parents who taught her strict discipline and routine for the sake of success. And I grew up in a warm family where I was allowed to pave my own path. These 2 approaches clashed when it came to our own children, especially when they went to school. My ex wanted them to fully focus on. I thought they just needed to be kids, enjoy life, and figure things out for themselves. After months of fighting, we decided it wouldn't work out. We split amicably, and she even paid much more child support than she had to, but she insisted on it. We still spend Christmas and birthdays together for the sake of the children. My sons mostly live with me by choice. My ex sees them about once a week, but now they're teenagers, and sometimes they just want to spend the weekends on their own. The elder White once said that their mother was partly to blame for this because she was too strict with them. I try to remind them that she's still their mother and that she did what she thought was right, and at the very least, they owe her respect. And then it happened a few days ago. The kids are on vacation, so my ex tries to come over during the week as often as possible to see them. She stopped by, but both sons were visiting friends. Since she'd come all the way, I invited her in for a drink. We chatted and ended up looking through old photos of the kids. We laughed until we got to one where the sons were 6 and 2. I'm holding them both on my shoulders, and the 3 of us are laughing. My ex suddenly burst into tears and started apologizing for everything. I was confused, but I hugged her and told her that she did what she thought was right and that she shouldn't apologize for wanting to be an involved mother. We sat like that for a while, but no one wanted to let go of the hug. Then she looked at me like she did when we were first dating. We started kissing and everything just took off. It was like all 12 years of marriage had washed over us all over again. And all the while, my ex kept crying and telling me she loved me. She quickly left before the kids came home and we stayed silent until today. Today, I received a message from her asking to meet alone and talk. So what should I do now? On the one hand, my ex and I still care about each other. But on the other, this could be a huge shock not only for our children but for the rest of the family as well. Well, before we move on to the update, I suggest you answer the author's question. What would you do in this situation? I would probably look at what's going on in my life right now, and if I don't have any candidates to marry, then I probably would end up getting back together with my ex. So what? After all, they have a lot in common. These are their children. And if neither of them is currently dating anyone, and they don't have any prospects, then why not? At least date for a while. See how things go. And then, if everything goes well, then get back together. And if not, then make a final decision and not get back together. Let's get to the update. Update. Hi everyone. It's been a while, but I have an update to the previous post. First, thank you all. You gave great advice and really helped me prepare for the conversation with my ex. We met 2 days after she sent the message. I stopped by her apartment and we had a great conversation. About a year after the divorce, my ex started seeing a therapist to sort out her life. While sorting through her childhood, she realized that she was repeating to her children the same things her parents did to her. And this is exactly what ultimately made her hate her parents, which is why she was always closer to my mother than to her own. She burst into tears and said she'd never stopped loving me and that, despite the document, I'd always be her husband. She admitted that on the day it happened. She knew we wouldn't have sons and wanted to spend time alone with me. When we started looking at old photos, she was simply overwhelmed. She said she missed me, that she'd do anything to make things right, and that, at the very least, she wanted to be my partner again. I replied that I'd always cared about her, that I'd missed her too, and that I still felt something for her. At the end of the evening, we both admitted we still loved each other and decided to try again. The conditions were, take things slow, go to couples therapy regularly, and not tell the children yet. Since then, we've spent almost every day together and have already had our first session. Everything went quite well, despite everything that happened. And we've managed to lay the foundation for our new or old relationship. We'll continue, but this is a good start. A couple of days ago, I hosted a family dinner. The sons don't know about us yet. I simply said that it would be good for us to have dinner together. And frankly, my wife really changed. She was more open with the kids, interested in their sports, friends, hobbies. The kids responded really well, and for the first time in a long time, they were enthusiastically talking and laughing with their mother. She even organized a trip to the zoo for the 4 of us, like we did when the boys were little. I think the eldest suspected something, but he didn't show it. And the fact that we were doing so well at CO Parenting served as a great cover. Everything is fine now, and I think deep down we both never truly fell out of love with each other. I think we would have eventually found our way back to each other, no matter what happened that day. Thank you again for all the kind words and support. Well, that's the end of the story. I'm so glad they ended up getting back together. The only thing that's really sad is that they had such a long breakup. Of course, there are positives to be had from this, like finally realizing how much they truly love each other. But it still might not have worked out this way. One of them could have started a new family during this time, and either one or both would have lived miserably. My wife, in my opinion, should have immediately gone to a therapist while still married and sorted out all her baggage. Then, perhaps the divorce would never have happened. Unfortunately, many of us tend to think that if I go to a therapist, I already know what they'll tell me. And that's a huge mistake a lot of people make. Thank goodness, at least neural networks have appeared now, where you can type in your request and it will immediately give you some advice. But after talking about psychology with 2 for a while, sooner or later, you come to the conclusion that you really need a real person with whom you can communicate. At least, that's how it was with me. Of course, Ishkar is great at giving immediate advice, but long-term therapy can't be replaced by a GPT chat, deep dive, or grok. By the way, it would be interesting to read your thoughts on this matter. Have you tried consultations, or have you tried consultations with a live therapist? And what difference did you notice? I'd be very interested to hear all of this from you. In the meantime, thank you for listening to this story to the end. Watch our previous videos, which you can see here. Be sure to subscribe to our channel if, for some strange reason, you haven't already. And good luck!